Hello, my friends, and welcome to this week's Mindful Monday Live. So, today I would like to talk about the practice of self acceptance, and then we'll do a guided self acceptance practice. When I was a teenager, shortly after I was released from a residential treatment center for my panic and anxiety disorder, I remember wanting to get to a point where I felt like I could leave my home without taking my bottle of Xanax with me. And this felt really important to me because otherwise I felt like my fear and my anxiety were actually still in the driver's seat of my life, that they were still controlling me. And I really wanted to get to a point where I felt secure enough and confident enough in my own capacity to handle things that I could just deal with deal with it on my own, even if I had a panic attack. So it was around about this same time that I started to see my fears and my anxiety as being like a younger part of myself. And as I imagined this, I imagined inviting her into the room to come sit down next to me. And I don't really know where that idea came from back then. But what I did know was that I had already tried to avoid my anxiety and avoid my fears. I tried holding them at arm's distance. I tried pushing them away, and all of those things only made them worse. And so I did the only other thing that I could think of, which was, what if I just invited them in and let them be there with me? And basically, I developed an attitude of acceptance. And what I found was that it really helped me. And so acceptance, including accepting the difficult and challenging parts of yourself, is really useful. And it doesn't mean that we prefer the way something is or even that we approve of it. It simply means that we accept the reality of it. And in real acceptance, we're not adding additional painful experiences like a sense of shame or a sense of defeat to the situation. Instead, there's this kind of clarity to our acceptance, a kind of, I don't know, just emotional coolness or just a simplicity of just seeing things as clearly as we can. And in acceptance, there's always that really wonderful teaching of the well-known serenity prayer, right? May I have the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And so practicing acceptance is basically engaging in realistic thinking, right? It's seeing what is true, both the difficulties and the things that are good inside yourself and in the world and in other people. Acceptance is about seeing the whole picture, and practicing acceptance can actually help us see and make peace with the whole picture. So, going back to my experiences with really severe panic and anxiety disorder as a teenager, when I started accepting those parts of myself that were really anxious and afraid, um, the acceptance was really seeing that it's true that I had anxiety and that sometimes my anxiety led to panic attacks, which are incredibly uncomfortable. In fact, back then, I literally thought that I was dying from them. And not exaggerating, but it really felt like that. But it was also true that once I learned that what was happening to me were panic attacks and anxiety, it was true that as bad as they felt, they weren't going to kill me. And I had tools that I could use to help calm myself down in the moment if I were to have another panic attack or another anxiety attack. And so acknowledging all of that really helped me to see the whole picture and to recognize that I actually did have inner resources to deal with my anxiety without only having the option of relying on Xanax to rescue me. So I just want to give you another example of this in real life of acceptance could be if you have ever gone through having a loved one who has been very, very sick and then they die. And as painful as it is to lose them, we often acknowledge how thankful we are that they are no longer suffering and in pain. And so, with that, we're seeing and we're accepting the whole picture, as difficult as that may be. So, for all of its benefits, though, actual acceptance can be really hard for us. And if you think about, like, if you have ever been in love or even really desired or had a crush on someone who didn't want you in the same way, then you very likely understand how difficult it can be at times to just accept reality. And maybe that's a funny example, but if you think about it, if we think back even to when we were younger and we had those, crazy crushes on people where it was not at all reciprocated, that part of us did not want to accept that because, it felt good to like somebody. And then the other side of it is that sometimes, another reason why it can be hard to accept things in our lives is that sometimes people have this idea that if you accept something, then you're going to feel even worse, or you're going to feel so much grief and so much sorrow that it's going to completely overwhelm you. Um, so if I accept, for example, that a certain person is never going to love me the way that I wish they would, or if I really accept maybe that I'm never going to get ahead in this particular job, then I think I'm going to feel really bad, and that is understandable. Or, it can be really, really hard to accept losing people. Like, we can have this fear that if I accept this, then, I'm going to lose a whole huge part of myself. And the way to deal with that is to really grow the strengths inside of yourself that help you tolerate being with the uncomfortable feelings that inevitably come up for us in life. And in that way, we can get the benefits of accepting things as they are, while also allowing ourselves to feel disappointment, grief, sorrow, anger, whatever the uncomfortable feeling is, that then we can just allow those feelings to flow through us because we develop the strength of being able to be with our uncomfortable feelings. And a lot of times what happens is that if we don't accept things, if we try to keep our uncomfortable feelings, at arm's length or at bay, then oftentimes they just end up hanging around even longer. And so it's when we really allow ourselves to surrender, when we accept things, then our feelings can actually flow through us and keep moving on. And so, what is it that we actually accept? So, if we're talking about acceptance and we're talking about self acceptance, what is it that we're actually accepting? Well, fundamentally, we are accepting the truth of things as best as we can tell. We're telling the truth to ourselves. Maybe we're telling the truth to others about reality as best as we know it. We understand that what we think is true may evolve over time because sometimes we think we know the truth and that changes. And we get that, but still there's this fundamental truth to things. And paradoxically, kind of the flip side is that it can be really helpful if we come at things with sort of a beginner's mind, a kind of an openness, a curiosity, a willingness to investigate, to look deeper into things, um, and just to recognize that, maybe we're not always so sure. Maybe the truth isn't so set in stone and that we can be open to being curious about things. And when we can apply this to ourselves, it's really, really beneficial. Like when we start to look at what is your truth? What is the truth of you? So, for example, what is the truth in terms of all of your many different layers, right? Where we are these really complex beings. And, on the surface, we might have like a layer of defensiveness or, that shield, or sometimes we even have a layer of anger that's showing up on the surface, on the outer layer of things. But if we look more closely, we find that perhaps underneath that, maybe there are these softer, more vulnerable layers of hurt or fear or uneasiness. And that those outer layers are just our defense mechanisms trying to protect those softer, more vulnerable inner layers. And another way that I like to think about in terms of the truth of you and who you are, is kind of in terms of the younger and older parts of yourself. Um, I've always felt like that at any given time in life, inside of ourselves, we are every age we have already been, and sometimes we don't know which part of us is going to show up. That you can have that older, more adult layer of your psyche, but then underneath are those younger and younger and younger layers going all the way back to even when you were a baby. And so sometimes in certain situations, it is the rebellious teenager that's showing up, or sometimes it's the scared child, and sometimes it's the wise adult that shows up. And so when we really look at ourselves and accept ourselves, can you include all of your own layers, the whole truth of you? And can you accept what you find there? Because sometimes we can become so identified with certain parts of ourselves, such as, the logical, responsible adult, that we forget the parts of ourselves that are very playful or spiritual or creative. And I think this is especially true when we are trying so hard to live up to the expectations of others, whether that was your parents, society, your partner, even living up to the expectations of your kids if you're a parent. And so we can do this to the extent that we end up kind of burying other parts of ourselves, right? That we forget, like, what's it like to have fun, to let ourselves feel joy, to remember that we maybe don't have to be so serious all the time. Can we let down our guard? Can we let ourselves be like goofy and playful? Do we even remember what that is like? And when you look at that within yourself, can you see the truth of that in yourself? Are there parts of you that perhaps that you have denied in an attempt to please others? And as you see those parts of yourself, can you say, can you say, like, I see you, I recognize you, and this part of me is real too, and this part of me is valid too. That scared part. I know, in my because I work a lot with women who uh, have been experiencing anxiety, usually because they've gone through some really hard life circumstance. And then they find that these fearful parts of themselves are really coming out to the forefront. And um and then, can we, even in our fear, look back and recognize the parts of ourselves that have already successfully navigated really big challenges in our own lives? um can we see that part of us even when our fear is sitting right there with us? I think about that, like, if you've ever had health anxiety, because this can be a big one for people, that, like, if something happened, or even you just had, one time that you went to the doctor's office and they took your blood pressure and you got anxious and it shot way up or something, that then we can have this, like, extreme fear about going back and being in that situation again. And it can be really helpful to, in the future, to accept that part of you that was afraid because maybe something scary did happen to you in your life, and to almost relate to that part as like the younger scared child. Can you accept her? Can you say, like, no wonder you're afraid, like that was really scary when that happened in your life before, and now I can also look at the whole picture and recognize the truth that I also have these resources that can help me get through the hard stuff. So, can we accept all the different parts of ourselves, the parts, of me that are rebellious or angry or anxious or afraid? And then to also recognize that there are the parts of me that are very reliable and sweet and loving and courageous. And I can accept all of that. That there are the parts of me that are really young, there are parts of me that are wise, that are parts of me that really like order, and then there's parts of me that like to be a little wild and crazy. That these are all parts of yourself. Can you see the truth of that, and can you accept all of them? And I think this is so important, because we really can't change something for the better if we can't accept that part of ourselves. I know that, like, if you've ever known anyone that's gone through something like Alcoholics Anonymous, I'm pretty sure the very first thing you have to do is accept that you're an alcoholic, right? Hi, this is part of me, part of who I am, but it's not all of us. And Accepting that which you are trying to heal or soothe or ease or grow or change in one way or another, accepting that in yourself is the first step towards changing in any kind of lasting way. And I also think it's just a really important part of practicing self-love. And that's something most of us can use is a little more self-love, a little more self-acceptance, because we can be so hard on ourselves. So we're going to do our practice now. Sorry for talking so long. Um, but we're going to do a self-acceptance practice. And I just invite you to begin by just starting by settling in and just finding a physical posture that you can settle into and that helps you accept being here right now. And so maybe you'll want to close your eyes just to really drop your attention into your body, or just take a very soft downward gaze. And just begin by finding the sense of being supportive of yourself, having your own back and being on your own side. And then I want you to bring to mind one or more simple examples of you accepting something in your life. And it doesn't have to be big. I mean, literally, you could look around the room and find something that you can accept, like there is a floor beneath you right now. There are walls around you if you're outside, if you're inside, rather, or the chair beneath you, or maybe you just recognize something that you've been through in your life that you were able to accept. And what is it like to recognize the fact of that, to accept its existence? Like, I accept that part of me can very easily become worried or fearful or anxious. And I can just accept that that is one part of who I am. It's one part of my existence. And you might just say to yourself, I accept that such and such exists as it is. I accept it as it is. And just remember that acceptance doesn't mean you have to like it, doesn't even mean you have to approve of it. It just means, okay, I surrender to the reality of this, whatever it is, independent of my preferences. I can make room for it. I don't have to fight it. I can allow it. And it might also be true that we're trying to like nudge that part to become better while we're accepting it as it is right now. Those can both exist. So let's apply this to you right now, starting with whatever you are experiencing in this moment. So I want you to just pick something simple. So let's start with the sensations of breathing or the contact points of your bottom against your chair or your feet on the floor. And as you focus on these sensations, just explore what's it like to just accept them as whatever they are. whether it's comfortable or uncomfortable. You might even softly say to yourself, I accept this. I accept this. And just explore what it's like to release any resistance whatsoever to the experience that you're having in this moment. Even sometimes when we stop to practice or meditate, we find that we're actually feeling really agitated or uneasy. And even though we want to cultivate this sense of calm and peace and tranquility, that's not always what's naturally going to be there. And so, can we accept our experience without resisting it? Can we just surrender to it? And it might even help to regard the experience a little impersonally, as if it's just happening. Yes, it's your experience, but it's not that you're making it whatever it is. It's just sensations. And can you also try this with other things that are passing through your awareness? Maybe emotions or thoughts or images. So let's say there's an emotion, perhaps a sense of agitation or sadness or irritation. Can you fully allow that emotion to be whatever it is and to let it flow? Can you approach that with a sense of curiosity? Just, how does that feel in my body? How is that showing up for me? Or with our thoughts, because so often with meditation and practices, people think, oh, I'm not supposed to be thinking about these other things. But it's the nature of the mind to think. So, can you accept that? Oh, these are the thoughts that I'm thinking. Maybe I don't like them. Maybe I want to nudge them. But can you accept their reality? You're not denying that they occurred. You're not hanging on to them. You're not getting into a fight with them or getting out of a fight with them. There it is. That's my thought. Thinking. So there's kind of a surrender that happens when we fully allow our stream of consciousness to be whatever is in the present moment. There's this surrendering, this accepting. So see if you can fully allow the unfolding of your experiences, all that you're experiencing in the present moment right now. We're not pushing anything away. We're not fighting anything. We're not trying to hold on to anything and make some feelings last and others go. But we're just allowing our experiences to unfold, allowing it to fully be. In effect, you're allowing you to fully be you in whatever you are experiencing, the joys, the sorrows, the loves, the irritations, discomforts, pains. You're allowing all of it, knowing that you don't have to act on it, but you can still allow it to flow and to be what it is. And something kind of amazing starts to happen when we let ourselves be ourselves fully in the present as whatever is being experienced at the time. Then we can start to accept the many, many parts of ourselves, the different layers of your mind, the younger layers underneath the more adult layers, the softer layers that are under the harder, more brittle ones like hurt or anger, the goofy parts of yourself, the pushy parts of yourself, the parts that worry about what other people think about you. And you might even imagine that you are like this vast country and you're extending the sense of acceptance over the entire landscape of your own psyche. The beautiful flower filled meadows, and also the dark swamps of your psyche. All of it, accepting all of it. And you might consider different parts of yourself, especially the parts that you've pushed away or disowned or been ashamed of. And you might look at each of them one by one and say in your mind, I accept you as part of me. This too is part of me. All the various parts of yourself are really just trying to help you. They don't always do it skillfully, but they are trying to help you. So you can look at each one of them and acknowledge, like, yes, you're trying to help me. Perhaps you're trying to protect me, even if some of the ways you go about it create trouble for me, and I need to manage that. But fundamentally, you can look at all the different parts of yourself and say to them, or just know inside of yourself, you're trying to help me. You're also included. You have a seat here at the table. And you can even take this a step farther by saying thank you to the different parts of yourself. And this is especially useful when parts that have troubled you or that you've fought with. Thank you. Thank you, my crazy hot temper. I really have one. Thank you, my fear and anxiety. Thank you, sensitive inner child that just wants people to get along and to be happy. Thanks to each and every one of you. And through this practice, you can accept the life that you've had, for better or worse. When you look back on it, parts you like, parts you don't like, parts that you wish had gone differently, parts you're really glad about. When you look back on your life, can you accept it? Yep, that is the wild and wonderful life that I've had so far. Or that's the really hard life I've had so far. Something really powerful can happen for us when we stop trying to change the facts of whatever happened in the past, when we stop, trying to rewrite the story And yes, we can certainly try to influence their effects now and into the future, but the facts of whatever happened were whatever happened. And there's something peaceful and healthy that happens when we can accept our life and our losses for what they are, for better and for worse. So be aware of and accept the life that you have now, remembering that you can change things moving forward, remembering that you don't have to like it all, but you can still accept it. Yep, this is the life I have. Not denying it, not fighting it, not trying to talk yourself into thinking it's different than it is. Just letting go of all of that so that what you're left with is this just kind of fundamental honesty. And it's almost like an emotional coolness of just the reality as it is. Acceptance of the life you have now, of the body you have now, of all the different parts of you that exist in you. Just notice what it feels like to just be accepting of all of it. Sometimes as we grow and we change, we want to hold on to the way things were before. We don't want to accept the reality of how things are now. But there's so much peace that can come with that. And it doesn't mean that we have to be complacent or apathetic. There's just this feeling of acceptance that's an easing, a calming, and a peacefulness. I accept the life that I have. I accept the body that I have. I accept the mind that I have and the experiences that I have had. And then, just to finish up our practice today, I want you to let your mind just roam for a bit and see what it's like to just rest in a very general but deep sense of self acceptance, allowing all that you are, resisting none of what you are, just full, compassionate self acceptance. It might even feel radical to accept yourself and your life so fully. But see if you can find the good feelings in self acceptance, that easing, that letting go, that kindness towards yourself, maybe even a sense of relief. I don't have to be perfect. I don't have to please everybody all the time. I can just be the perfectly imperfect me. So again, you might just say to yourself, I accept myself, and let that accepting really sink in all the way into your bones, spreading inside of you throughout your whole body, your whole being, even your energetic self. What is it like to just fully, fully embrace and accept yourself? And just imagine for a moment walking forward in the days to come, resting in that feeling of just 100% accepting yourself as you are. From now on, being more truly supportive of the things that will make your life better and that make you feel happier in the major areas of your life. Just really resting in that feeling of total self acceptance. So you stop nitpicking at yourself, stop criticizing yourself, stop comparing yourself to others. You might even call it radical self love. I accept myself. And then, whenever you are ready, you can open your eyes, bring your awareness back to the space around you. And thank you so much for joining me today.